Rain poured down on Chicago like a gray curtain, turning the glittering downtown streets into a gloomy watercolor painting. Amara Johnson stood inside the private elevator leading to the penthouse of a luxury high-rise on the Gold Coast, her heart pounding as if it might explode. Her fingers unconsciously caressed her 4-month pregnant belly, slightly but already showing beneath the thin coat. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 40th floor, and Amara took a deep breath and adjusted her soaking wet curls and simple dress. She had just finished her shift at Le Ciel, the upscale French restaurant where she worked as a waitress, and where she first met Ethan Caldwell 8 months ago. His eyes, blue as a summer lake, had captivated her from the very first moment. The elevator doors slid open, revealing the tall, lean figure of Marcus, Ethan's butler, his face as neutral as ever. "Ms. Johnson and Mr. Caldwell are expecting you to be in the study," Marcus said evenly. Amara nodded, following him through the grand hallway of the penthouse. Every step overwhelmed her with the opulence of this world. Original paintings on the walls, gleaming Italian marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling glass windows that opened onto a rain-soaked but commanding view of Chicago. This world was far removed from her cramped apartment in Englewood, where she counted every tip to survive. Marcus stopped in front of the heavy mahogany door of the study, knocked gently, then opened it. "Ms. Johnson is here, sir," he announced, then stepped back. Amara entered, her wet shoes squeaking on the polished wooden floor. Ethan Caldwell stood with his back to her, looking out at the storm through the window, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. At 32, the heir and CEO of Caldwell Properties radiated authority. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored suit that hugged his frame. He turned slowly, his handsome face illuminated by the lightning outside, his cold blue eyes sweeping over her before settling. He adjusted the watch on his wrist, a piece so refined that Amara knew it could cover her rent for an entire year, then finally spoke. "Amara," his voice deep and controlled, "would you like something to drink?" "Ah, but in your condition, perhaps not." His words took the breath from her lungs. "You know?" she asked, voice trembling. "Your message said it was urgent. It must be important." Ethan took a sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving hers. "It is important. But first, are you sure? Are you certain it's mine?" The question stabbed Amara's heart like a knife. "Of course, it's yours," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "There's no one else. You know that." Ethan sighed and set the glass down on the mahogany desk with deliberate slowness, as though weighing every second. Outside, thunder rumbled, filling the silence between them. "Then this is a problem, Amara," he said, his voice cold. "I'm about to sign a major deal in London next month. A pregnant woman, especially you, is not part of the plan." Amara felt the blood rush to her head. "A problem?" she repeated, her voice higher than intended. "I thought you loved me. You said we'd build a future together. That—" Ethan cut her off with a dry, emotionless laugh. "Love? Amara, did you think I was serious? You were a diversion, a way to pass the time. A waitress, a black woman from Englewood, no degree, no status. Did you think you could step into my world, my family, my board of directors?" Every word was a hammer blow to Amara's dignity. She clutched her handbag tightly, fighting back tears. "I thought we had something real," she whispered, voice breaking. "I believed in you." Ethan shook his head, eyes devoid of mercy. "You were never enough to be with me. A woman like you, pregnant, would be a stain on my reputation. I can't let that happen." He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a checkbook, and began writing with the speed of a seasoned banker. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper echoed in the rain. He tore off the check and held it out to her. $50,000. Enough to handle this discreetly. An abortion or disappearing from Chicago. Your choice. Amara looked at the check, her vision blurred by tears. "I don't want your money," she said, voice shaking. "I want you to be part of this life, of our child's life." Ethan pressed a button on his desk, speaking into the intercom. Marcus gathered Ms. Johnson's belongings and escorted her out. He turned back to Amara, eyes ice cold. "There is no us, Amara. I said what I needed to say to get what I wanted, and I got it. Now it's over." The study door opened again, and Marcus appeared, expression blank. Behind him, Amara saw 3 black trash bags containing everything she had ever left at this apartment over the past 8 months. Clothes, books, and little gifts she once thought symbolized love. "This way, Ms. Johnson," Marcus said softly. Amara stood frozen, her mind spinning. In just 15 minutes, the dream of a family, a future with Ethan, had vanished. "I believed you," she murmured, as if speaking to herself. "I gave you everything." "And I paid for it accordingly," Ethan replied, already back on the phone, as if she no longer existed. "Goodbye, Amara." Marcus gently touched her elbow, guiding her out of her daze. She picked up the check and stuffed it into her purse, not because she wanted it, but because something inside her told her it would be a weapon for the future. The elevator ride down to the lobby felt like descending into hell. Each floor, another shattered piece of hope. Outside, the rain still poured, soaking through Amara's thin coat as she stood on the sidewalk. The taxi driver, already called by Marcus, helped toss the garbage bags into the trunk, grumbling about the weather. "Where to, miss?" the driver asked bluntly. Amara had no answer. She had given up her apartment after spending nearly every night at Ethan's. Her savings were gone, her family in Atlanta too stretched to help, and her work visa depended on her job at LaCiel. Greyhound bus station, she finally said, recalling a shelter in Englewood a coworker once mentioned. As the taxi pulled away, Amara looked up one last time at the window of Ethan's study. He was there, a shadowy figure, bathed in light, speaking animatedly on the phone, as he had just closed a small transaction. To him, she was a problem solved. But inside Amara, a fire had begun to burn. She placed a hand over her belly, whispering to the unborn child, "I promise, baby, we're not disappearing. We'll show the world they were wrong about your mother." The storm still howled outside, but a steely resolve had formed within Amara. This rainy night was not the end. It was the beginning of a story of resilience, of a black woman the world tried to discard, who would rise to rewrite her destiny. The rain continued to fall relentlessly over the Englewood neighborhood, where aging buildings stood clustered beneath a gray sky. Amara Johnson sat on a narrow bunk bed in Mary's Haven, a shelter for homeless women on the south side of Chicago. The sound of rain tapping against the fragile window mixed with the quiet sobs of a child in the corner and the murmurs of other women, each carrying her own heartbreaking story. Amara held her now more visibly pregnant belly tightly under a worn-out sweater. 4 months ago, she had dreamed of a future with Ethan Caldwell. But now, all she had left were 3 trash bags of belongings and a $50,000 check, the price he paid for her to disappear. The shelter was a foreign world to Amara. Here, she saw black women, brown women, and immigrants grappling with circumstances even harsher than hers. A single mother escaping domestic violence, an immigrant woman facing deportation, and a young pregnant girl with no place to go. These stories made Amara feel both empathy and fear. She realized that, in society's eyes, she too was invisible. A black woman with no degree, no power, pregnant in a city that offered little mercy. On her first night at Mary's Haven, Amara couldn't sleep. She lay listening to the rain, her mind spinning with unanswerable questions. Her work visa depended on her job at Le Ciel, but her growing belly made her unsure how long she could keep it. Her family in Atlanta was already burdened with her mother's medical bills, and the money she sent home had long since run dry. Ethan's check sat in her purse, but every time she thought of using it, it felt like selling off her pride. No, she told herself, you will not let him define you. The next morning, in the shelter's communal dining room, Amara met Lena Brooks, a black volunteer lawyer with short curly hair and sharp eyes. Lena was handing out coffee and bread, speaking with each woman with rare sincerity. When she reached Amara, she noticed the tension on her face. "You okay?" Lena asked, pushing a cup of hot coffee toward her. "You look like you just walked through a storm, literally and figuratively." Amara gave a faint smile, but couldn't hide her exhausted eyes. She briefly shared her story, the love with Ethan, the betrayal, and the current situation. Lena listened without interruption, her gaze filled with deep empathy. Lena said, "I've been in a place like yours when Amara finished. Not a shelter, but that feeling of being abandoned by the world. I'm the daughter of a single mother and grew up in Bronzeville. My mom worked 16 hours a day so I could go to law school. You're not alone, Amara, and you're stronger than you think." Lena's words felt like a sliver of light in the darkness. Amara felt a new, faint current of energy surge through her. "But what do I do now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I'm about to lose my job. My visa's expiring, and I have nowhere to go." Lena sat down beside her, voice firm. "First, you must care for your health, yours and the baby's. Then, we'll figure it out. What skills do you have, aside from waitressing?" Amara thought for a moment. "I'm good at organizing and taking care of others. At Le Ciel, I always tried to make things run faster and smoother. And I love cooking. My mom taught me to make traditional black dishes, stews, cornbread, bean soup. Customers often praised my attentiveness." Lena nodded, jotting something in her notebook. "Good. That's a starting point. I'll help you review your visa options and find a temporary job. But most importantly, Amara, you must believe you can overcome this. Don't let that man define your worth." Amara secured a temporary job at a laundromat in Englewood in the following days. The work was grueling, the hot steam exhausting, but she gritted her teeth and endured. She returned to the shelter every evening and shared meals with the other women. Once, she cooked black bean soup using her mother's recipe, and the aroma warmed the dining room. "You should open a restaurant," joked Tasha, a mother of two. "No, seriously, Amara. That dish made me feel like I was home." Tasha's comment planted a seed in Amara's mind. She began bringing small portions of food to the shelter, sharing them with other mothers. They loved the meals and felt her care, the kind of care that comes from someone who truly understands their struggles. The idea of a low-cost meal service for single mothers started to take shape, but Amara knew it would take more than good food to make it a reality. Lena invited Amara to her small office at the Bronzeville Community Center one afternoon. Lena said, "I reviewed your visa status," sliding a folder toward her. "Your job at Le Ciel is the foundation of your work visa. If they let you go, you'll have 60 days to find a new sponsor or leave the U.S. However, there's another option, an entrepreneur visa. You can stay if you can prove you're building a legitimate business." "A business?" Amara repeated, her voice full of doubt. "I have no money, no experience. I'm just a waitress." Lena leaned forward, eyes serious. You're not just a waitress, Amara. You're a black woman who survived things many others couldn't. That's strength. And that $50,000 check? That's not his money. That's your tool to build a future. Amara felt a surge of emotion, fear, hope, and a flicker of anger. Ethan's check still sat in her purse, a reminder of betrayal. But Lena's words helped her see it differently. Amara said, I won't use it to get by. Her voice steadier. If I use it, it'll be to build something bigger. For my child. For women like us. Lena smiled, revealing pride for the first time. That's the Amara I want to see. Now, let's talk about your idea. That black bean soup wasn't just food. It was a way to connect, to uplift. You can start from there. Back at the shelter that night, Amara sat under the dim light and wrote down the first ideas for a meal service. She envisioned affordable, nutritious meals delivered to single mothers, women who didn't have the time or means to cook. She thought of the women at Mary's Haven, who had shared their stories, and realized she could create something that fed the body and nourished the soul. The storm outside had eased, but inside Amara, a new storm was forming, a storm of determination and hope. She looked down at her growing belly and whispered, We're going to make it, baby. Not because of him, but because of us. The depth of despair had become where Amara discovered her strength, and from here, she would begin the journey to rebuild her life. The dim light of dawn crept through the window of Mary's Haven shelter, casting a pale glow on the small table where Amara Johnson sat, a notebook in front of her. Scrawled across the pages was her mother's black bean soup recipe, alongside a cost breakdown. Beans, spices, food containers. Now 5 months pregnant, Amara felt light flutters in her belly. A gentle reminder of why she couldn't give up. Since her conversation with Lena Brooks, the idea of a meal service for single mothers had become the fire that kept her warm through the darkest days in Englewood, Chicago. Amara's life had become a cycle of non-stop work. At 3 a.m., she cleaned office buildings downtown, mopping floors and emptying trash bins in cold, echoing skyscrapers. By 8 a.m., as she was behind the Suds and Shine laundromat counter, breathing in hot steam as she folded clothes for hurried customers. On weekends, she packed groceries at Save-A-Lot, her swollen feet aching in protest, but her smile never fading. Each day allowed her just 4 hours of sleep, often interrupted by backaches or anxiety about the future. Still, Amara didn't allow herself to waver. Just a little more, she whispered to her belly. Mommy's fighting for you. The pay from 3 jobs was just enough to rent a small room in a communal building in Englewood. Cramped, musty, lit by flickering fluorescent lights, Amara began testing her business idea here. She used a portion of her savings to buy ingredients, cooking batches of black bean soup and stew in the shared shelter kitchen. Her first meals were delivered to the mothers at Mary's Haven. You don't have to do this, said Tasha, a single mother of 2, accepting a steaming food container. You're pregnant too, Amara, but the gratitude in Tasha's eyes and the laughter of children eating cornbread made Amara feel her efforts were worth something. One evening, while washing dishes in the communal kitchen, a sharp pain struck Amara's belly. She paused, took deep breaths, and cradled her stomach. It's just exhaustion, she told herself, though something inside urged her to get checked. The next day, she visited a community clinic in Bronzeville, the only place she could afford. The ultrasound technician, an older woman with kind eyes, moved the probe across her belly. She murmured, adjusting her glasses. Have you been feeling more movement than usual? Amara nodded, heart racing. Is something wrong with my baby? The doctor smiled. Nothing's wrong, Ms. Johnson. Just more than expected. Congratulations. You're having triplets. The clinic spun around Amara. 3? She echoed, breath catching. 3 babies? 3 healthy babies, the doctor confirmed, pointing at the monitor. See? 3 distinct heartbeats, all strong. Amara left the clinic, hands trembling as she clutched the ultrasound image. 3 children, 3 mouths to feed. 3 lives are entirely dependent on her. Joy mingled with terror. On the bus ride home, she gazed out the window, watching the gray buildings of Chicago blur past. Reminders of the narrow road ahead. Can I do this? She asked herself, then immediately answered, I must. Amara shared the news at the shelter with Tasha and the other women. Triplets? Tasha cried, throwing her arms around her. You're a superhero, Amara. The others laughed and clapped, but Amara noticed the flickers of worry in their eyes. They knew too well the price of single motherhood in an unforgiving city, especially for a black woman like her. Social stigma, unstable jobs, and a brutal immigration system were hurdles they all understood too well. When Lena Brooks heard the news, she arrived at the shelter the same day with a stack of documents and a determined smile. 3 babies is a huge challenge, but it's also powerful motivation, Lena said, resting her hand on Amara's shoulder. Your meal service idea, it's not just business. It's a way to build community and help women like us stand firm. I've reached out to a few small business support groups in Bronzeville. They want to meet you. Amara shook her head, still hesitant. I don't know anything about business, Lena. I know how to cook and work hard. That's already a better start than most, Lena replied. You have heart, and you have a story. Black investors here will understand the value of that. But you have to be ready. Are you willing to try? Lena's question ignited a new flame in Amara. She thought of her mother, a black woman who had worked tirelessly in Atlanta to raise her, defying every prejudice. She thought of the children growing inside her, unborn, yet already the reason she breathed. I'm willing, Amara said firmly, but I need your help. Lena nodded. I'll help you prepare the paperwork for the entrepreneur visa, but you'll need a solid plan. Start small. Focus on feeding the mothers here. If it works, we can grow. In the weeks that followed, Amara pushed herself harder than ever. She continued her grueling shifts by day. Her swollen feet and aching back were constant companions. By night, she studied business planning from books borrowed from the Chicago Public Library. She scribbled ideas on scrap paper and calculated costs and prices to keep meals affordable for single mothers. She even began learning basic coding through free online classes. Just a few hours a week, her eyes burning with exhaustion. She told herself, I must understand technology if I want to build something bigger. One evening, while cooking a stew for the shelter, Amara received a call from Liciel. The manager's voice was cold. Ms. Johnson, your belly is too noticeable now. Our customers expect a particular image. You understand. We'll send 2 weeks' compensation, but you can't keep working here. The words hit her like a punch. Amara collapsed into a chair, hands covering her face. The job at Liciel was not only income, it was the foundation of her visa. Losing it meant she had just 60 days to find a new sponsor or risk being forced to leave the U.S. But instead of sinking into despair, Amara looked at the pot of stew bubbling beside her, its aroma filling the kitchen. She thought of the mothers who depended on her meals, Tasha's smile, and Lena's unwavering belief. No, she told herself, you're not giving up. That night, Amara drafted a basic business plan and gave it a name. Amara's Hope. She envisioned a service that delivered food and created a support network where single mothers could share burdens from childcare to job hunting. As the sun rose over Englewood, Amara stood before the mirror, caressed her belly, and whispered, We're going to make it, my loves. Mama's turning this pain into power. The pale light of early winter filtered through the window of the shared kitchen at Mary's Haven shelter, where Amara Johnson stirred a pot of bubbling black bean soup. The aroma of sautéed onions and Cajun spices filled the air, making Tasha, a single mother sitting nearby, inhale with delight. Now 8 months pregnant, Amara moved slowly but steadily, her round belly forcing her to brace one hand against her hip for support. Though physically exhausted, her eyes shone with fierce determination. The idea of Amara's Hope, a low-cost meal service for single mothers, had become the flame keeping her upright through the harshest days in Englewood, Chicago. Losing her job at Le Ciel had been a heavy blow, but Amara refused to sink into despair. With the support of Lena Brooks, the black volunteer lawyer, she decided to use the $50,000 check from Ethan Caldwell, not to survive day by day, but to plant the seed of something greater. This money isn't his, she told herself. It's my tool. Lena helped Amara prepare the application for an entrepreneur visa, a legal path to stay in the U.S. by proving she was building a legitimate business. But to do that, Amara had to turn Amara's hope from an idea into reality. She started small. With $10,000 from the check, Amara rented a small commercial kitchen in Bronzeville, a neighborhood rich in black cultural heritage. The kitchen was old. The oven clicked and clanged. The tile floor cracked. But to Amara, it was a beginning. She bought ingredients in bulk, beans, rice, vegetables, and spent each evening cooking nourishing meals like stews, cornbread, and black bean soup. She continued working at the laundromat and grocery store by day, even as her legs swelled and her back ached. Every food box was carefully packed and included a handwritten note, "From Amara's Hope, with all my love." Her first customers were the mothers at Mary's Haven. They didn't just pay for the food, they spread Amara's story. "She gets us," Tasha told a group of women at the community center. "She's a pregnant single mom who is still working to help us." Word traveled fast. Soon, Amara received orders from mothers in Bronzeville, then Englewood. She made deliveries on a borrowed bicycle, her pregnant belly challenging every ride. But the smiles of the women receiving food, black, brown, immigrant women struggling through life, were all the motivation she needed to keep going. One afternoon, Lena arrived at the kitchen with a radiant smile. She said, "I've arranged a meeting with the Bronzeville Community Business Fund, and am handing Amara a folder. They want to hear about Amara's Hope. This is your chance to seek funding and grow." Amara felt her heart race. "But I don't know anything about pitching, Lena. What if they ask questions I can't answer?" Lena placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect, Amara. You have to tell your story. Black women like us, we're rarely invited to those tables. But when we are, we must speak boldly and truthfully." Amara spent the entire week preparing. She wrote and rewrote her presentation, practicing in the mirror of her tiny rented room. She researched similar businesses and learned how to talk about costs, profit margins, and social impact. The night before the meeting, she sat beside a pot of soup on the stove, gently rubbed her belly, and whispered, "Babies, Mama's about to do something big. I'll make you proud." The meeting took place at a community center in Bronzeville, its walls covered in murals depicting the history of Black Chicago. Amara, wearing a clean but straightforward maternity dress, stood before a group of investors, mostly black, with a few white faces. She felt their eyes scan her from her rounded belly to worn-out shoes. A middle-aged man, Mr. Harris, asked bluntly, "Ms. Johnson, you have no business experience or degree. Why should we invest in you?" The question cut like a knife, but Amara took a deep breath, remembering Lena's words. "Because I understand the people Amara's Hope serves," she replied, voice steady. "I'm a single mother, pregnant, working 3 jobs to survive. I know what women like me need: affordable, reliable food, and someone who understands them. Amara's hope isn't just selling meals. We're building a community where single mothers can rely on each other. I've already served 50 families in just 2 months, and that number is growing. A black woman, Mrs. Carter, nodded, her eyes warm. Have you already invested your own money? Amara nodded. I used $10,000 from a personal source. I need more capital to buy equipment, hire help, and expand into other neighborhoods. The meeting ended with a promise from Mrs. Carter that the fund would review her proposal. But Amara knew the opportunity wasn't guaranteed. She kept making deliveries, even as false labor contractions became more frequent. One evening, while packaging 20 meal boxes, a sharp pain made her grab the kitchen counter for support. Tasha, who happened to be there, rushed to help her sit. Amara, you need to rest, Tasha said worriedly. You can't do this all by yourself. Amara shook her head, eyes stinging. I have to, Tasha. If I stop now, everything collapses. Not just for me, for my babies, for all the sisters here. Tasha took her hand. You're not alone, Amara. We'll help you. You gave us hope. Now let us return it. Tasha's words lit a spark. Amara realized Amara's hope wasn't just her dream anymore. It had become part of the community. The mothers at Mary's Haven began helping her pack meals, share orders, and even refer friends. Their support carried her through the hardest days when her body cried out for rest. A week later, Lena called, her voice excited. She said the Bronzeville Fund agreed to grant $20,000 to expand Amara's hope. Your story moved them, and how you started from nothing. But more than that, Amara, they see potential in you. Amara sank into her chair, hand on her belly, tears rolling down her cheeks. I don't know how to thank you, Lena. Don't thank me, Lena replied. Thank yourself. You're doing something most people don't even dare to dream of. That night, in her tiny rented room, Amara opened her notebook and wrote a new line. Amara's hope. Not just food, but family. She looked at the ultrasound image of her triplets, her heart full of resolve. The hardships of being a pregnant black woman without stable work or a degree hadn't broken her. They had forged her into someone stronger, a woman ready to build a legacy for her children and community. The seed of Amara's hope had been planted, and though the road ahead remained tough, Amara knew she wasn't walking it alone. Rain tapped softly on the tin roof of the Bronzeville Community Hospital, a mournful melody mingling with Amara Johnson's faint groans. She lay on the hospital bed, hands gripping the rails, sweat trickling down her forehead. The contractions came fast and fierce, earlier than expected, forcing her to call a taxi mid-afternoon while packaging meals for Amara's hope. At 32 weeks pregnant, Amara hadn't anticipated that the 3 babies inside her would decide to come early. Alone in the emergency room, she felt solitude pressing down on her chest like a heavy blanket. No family, no loved ones, only the hum of machines and the worried eyes of nurses. Are you okay, Ms. Johnson? Asked Grace, a black nurse in her 40s, holding Amara's hand through a wave of pain. Grace's warm, motherly, and steady gaze reminded Amara of her mother in Atlanta. You're strong. Keep breathing, okay? Amara nodded, her voice trembling. I'm scared, Grace. What if the babies aren't okay? Grace squeezed her hand tighter. They'll be fine. Trust me. You brought them this far. That alone is a miracle. After 14 hours of labor, Amara gave birth to 3 baby boys, Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah. Tiny, each weighing under 4 pounds, they were immediately placed in incubators in the NICU, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. When wheeled into the NICU, Amara gazed through the glass, heart clenching at the sight of their fragile bodies wired with tubes and sensors. Love and fear flooded her in equal measure. "Hello, my babies," she whispered, pressing her hand to the glass. "Mommy's here. I'm not going anywhere." The doctor, a white woman with a gentle voice, explained that the triplets would need to stay in the NICU for several weeks to develop further. She said, "They're healthier than I expected, but they need time. You should rest too, Ms. Johnson. Your body needs recovery." But rest was a luxury Amara couldn't afford. Amara's hope, the meal service she had built from nothing, was growing, but she was its beating heart. Without her, cooking, deliveries, and operations would crumble. She split her time between the hospital and the tiny kitchen in Bronzeville, napping on plastic NICU chairs or catching sleep in her cramped rental room. Every day, she pumped breast milk and brought it to the hospital, clinging to the hope of one day holding her babies close. Her condition didn't go unnoticed by the community she had served. Tasha, the single mother from Mary's Haven, noticed the dark circles under Amara's eyes and the tremble in her hands. "You can't keep doing this, Amara," Tasha said, pulling her into the shared shelter kitchen chair. "You helped us. Now it's time we help you." Tasha and a group of mothers from Mary's Haven volunteered to support Amara's hope. They took turns cooking Amara's recipes, packaging meals, and delivering them to customers. "You gave us food that nourished more than our bodies," said Keisha, another mom, handing Amara a tip jar filled with customers. "This isn't just your job anymore. It's all of ours." That support was a breeze amid a storm. Amara didn't feel alone for the first time since Ethan's betrayal. She realized that Amara's hope wasn't just a business, a community, a lifeline of single mothers holding each other up through the most challenging times. It carried her through the long hospital days, where she sat beside the incubators, telling her baby stories about her mother, the food she used to make, and the dream she held for their future. One morning, Grace from the NICU called Amara over. She said, "Ms. Johnson, I've got good news," leading her into the room. "Isaiah, your biggest boy, is strong enough for you to hold." Amara's heart nearly stopped. She scrubbed in, donned a sterile gown, and sat in the rocker. Grace placed Isaiah in her arms, his tiny body warm against her chest. Amara looked down and saw bright blue eyes, just like Ethan's. Emotions swelled within her. She had feared those eyes would remind her of betrayal, but all she felt was love. "You're mine," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "No one will ever take you from me." That moment changed her. Amara realized her children weren't just remnants of Ethan. They were proof of her strength. They were her reason to press on, to survive and build a life worth living. Yet reality remained harsh. The NICU bills for her premature sons were stacking up, and the $20,000 grant from the Bronzeville Community Business Fund was barely enough to keep Amara's hope afloat, let alone cover personal expenses. When Lena Brooks learned of the situation, she came to the hospital with a plan. "You need to scale Amara's hope to create a stable income stream," Lena said, sitting beside Amara in the NICU waiting room. "I've reached out to a nonprofit that supports Black women entrepreneurs. They can help you build an online ordering system so you're not doing everything yourself." Amara shook her head, eyes fixed on Noah and Elijah in their incubators. "I don't know anything about tech, Lena, and I can't leave my boys." "No one's asking you to," Lena said firmly. "You can learn. I'll find someone to teach you basic coding. And your community, Tasha, Keisha, the others, has your back. Black women like us always find a way, don't we?" Lena was right. In the following weeks, Tasha organized a group of moms to keep Amara's hope running, giving Amara time to stay with her babies. A volunteer from the nonprofit, a Black woman named Maya, taught Amara how to use order management software. Even with just 3 hours of sleep a night, Amara began learning basic coding, jotting notes on Post-its stuck all over her rental wall. She envisioned an app for Amara's Hope, where single mothers could order meals, share childcare services, and find flexible job listings. When the day came for the babies to leave the NICU, Amara stood in the hospital room, holding all three in her arms for the first time: Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, tiny but strong, just like her. Grace stood beside her, wiping away tears. "You did it, Ms. Johnson," she said. "You're an incredible mother." Amara smiled, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Not just me, Grace. You, Tasha, Lena, Keisha. We did it." As she left the hospital, Amara looked down at her sleeping sons in the stroller, heart overflowing with resolve. Giving birth to triplets in solitude was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. With the support of a growing sisterhood, Amara's Hope would feed single mothers and empower them to rise. With three little angels by her side, Amara knew the road ahead would still be hard. But she was ready, for them and herself. Part 6. The Journey of Self-Learning and Growth. The soft blue glow of an old laptop screen lit up Amara Johnson's tired face as she sat on a folding sofa inside her small apartment in Hyde Park, Chicago. The wall clock read 4:30 a.m., the only quiet hour in the apartment, while her three sons, Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, slept soundly in a crib pushed up against the wall. Now a mother to three 6-month-old boys, Amara clumsily typed away, trying to complete a free online coding exercise. Her eyes stung from sleep deprivation, but she couldn't stop. Amara's Hope, the meal service for single mothers, had grown beyond her expectations. But she knew that to take it to the next level, she had to understand technology, the force shaping the world. 6 months after giving birth, Amara's life was a relentless cycle. Waking at 4 a.m. to work, preparing breakfast for the babies, delivering meals for Amara's Hope, caring for Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, and returning to her laptop once they were asleep. She barely slept 3 hours a night, often interrupted by a baby's cries. But whenever she was exhausted enough to consider giving up, she looked into her son's bright blue eyes. Much like Ethan Caldwell's, the man who had abandoned her, and found the will to continue. Not for him, she told herself, but for them, for myself. Amara's Hope now serves over 100 families in Bronzeville and Englewood, thanks to word of mouth from mothers like Tasha and Keisha. With the $20,000 grant from the Bronzeville Community Business Fund, Amara hired a delivery assistant and bought a new oven for the kitchen. But she quickly realized that to scale, she needed a more efficient system, an app that allowed mothers to place orders, share childcare, and access flexible jobs. The idea, which she named Mother's Haven, came from long conversations with moms at the Mary's Haven shelter. There, she realized they didn't just need food. They required a support network. Lena Brooks, the volunteer attorney who had stood by Amara since the beginning, was the one who sparked belief in this idea. One afternoon, Lena arrived at Amara's apartment with a folder and a radiant smile. She said, "I've registered you for the Chicago Community Enterprise Forum," placing a flyer on the table. "It's your chance to pitch Mother's Haven to investors. They're looking for innovative ideas from Black women. Are you ready?" Amara's heart raced. "Lena, I don't know anything about tech or public speaking. I'm just a single mom trying to raise 3 kids. Lena leaned in, her expression firm. "You're not just a single mom, Amara. You're a Black woman who built a business from nothing while pregnant with triplets and working 3 jobs. That's a strength no one can deny. You need to tell your story." Amara spent the whole week preparing. She borrowed books on programming and entrepreneurship from the Chicago Public Library, studied how to build a basic app through online tutorials, and rewrote her pitch repeatedly. She practiced in the mirror while the babies slept. Mother's Haven will be a platform for single mothers, she whispered to herself, to find meals, childcare, and jobs, all in one place. She envisioned a simple, user-friendly app where moms like Tasha could request emergency babysitting or find part-time work that fits their schedule. The day of the forum arrived. Amara pushed a triple stroller carrying Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah into the Bronzeville Community Center. The babies, dressed neatly in secondhand clothes, drew attention from the crowd. Wearing a pressed but worn maternity dress, Amara could feel the eyes of investors, some empathetic, some skeptical. When her turn came, she stood before the auditorium, heart pounding. But Lena's eyes from the front row helped her steady herself. Amara's hope began in my kitchen, she started, her voice trembling at first, then growing firm. I'm a single mother, pregnant with triplets, who once lived in a shelter. I know what mothers like me need: affordable, reliable food, and a community to lean on. Mother's Haven will be an app that helps them order meals, find childcare, and connect with flexible jobs. I've served 100 families in 6 months, and we can reach thousands with support. One investor, Maya Carter, a black woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, raised her hand. Ms. Johnson, do you have any tech experience? Who's going to build this app? Amara took a deep breath. I'm teaching myself to code, ma'am. I don't have a degree, but I have determination. I built Amara's Hope from nothing and found a team to bring Mother's Haven to life. Maya nodded, her gaze softening with respect. After the presentation, she approached Amara, who was changing Elijah's diaper in the corner of the room. You've got fire, Ms. Johnson, Maya said. I am investing in a black woman-led venture. I want to offer $500,000 for Mother's Haven, but you must commit to learning and growing your team. Amara was stunned, tears threatening to fall. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me for working hard, Maya replied. Women like us don't often get chances like this. Please take it. Maya's investment was a turning point. Amara hired a part-time programmer, an ambitious black student from the University of Chicago, to build a prototype for Mother's Haven. She continued learning to code, even if only for a few hours a week, writing notes on sticky paper taped across her apartment walls. She expanded Amara's Hope, hiring 2 more mothers from Mary's Haven to help with cooking and deliveries. Tasha became kitchen manager, bringing the organization and spirit that Amara desperately needed. But pressure still weighed heavy. Hospital bills from the premature birth remained unpaid, and Amara had to watch every dollar. As Isaiah cried for milk one night, Amara sat on the floor, staring at a frayed ultrasound photo. She thought of Ethan, of the cruel words he once said, "You'll never be enough." The pain lingered, but it was no longer a burden. It had become fuel. She whispered to her sons that we'll show the world we are enough. While Amara was packing meal boxes one morning, Tasha burst in with a local newspaper. You made the paper, Amara, she cried, pointing to the headline. Black single mother builds community through food. The article told the story of Amara's Hope and how she supported mothers across Bronzeville and Englewood. Orders skyrocketed, and Amara received an invitation from a nonprofit to present Mother's Haven at a major tech conference in Chicago. As the sun set over Hyde Park, Amara sat beside her son's crib, humming a lullaby her mother used to sing. Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah smiled, their blue eyes sparkling. Amara knew her journey of self-learning and growth was only beginning, but with her community's strength and unwavering resolve, she was turning her dream into reality. Mother's Haven wasn't just an app. It was hope. It was the power of black women rising through the unimaginable. Morning sunlight streamed through the curtains of a small apartment in Hyde Park, Chicago, casting a golden glow over the radiant faces of three little boys, Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, now 3 years old. Amara Johnson sat on the floor, laughing as Isaiah tried to stack an impossibly tall tower of wooden blocks, while Noah tapped out a spontaneous yet emotive tune on a toy piano. With focused eyes, Elijah scribbled numbers on a sheet of paper, mumbling to himself, as if solving a math problem. Amara watched them, pride swelling in her chest, laced with a tinge of worry. These boys weren't just her joy. They were little prodigies, each with a unique gift. And those piercing blue eyes, so much like Ethan Caldwell's, reminded her daily of the man who had walked away before their birth. 3 years after their premature delivery, Amara had turned Amara's hope into a stable business, serving hundreds of single mothers across Chicago. With the $500,000 investment from Maya Carter, she launched Mother's Haven, an app connecting mothers to food, childcare, and flexible work opportunities. The app now had 500 beta users, mostly black and brown women in Bronzeville and Englewood. But this success came at a steep price. Amara worked 16 hours a day as a mother, CEO, and self-taught programmer. She slept on the sofa beside her laptop to be close when the boys woke up. The boys' talents had begun showing early. Isaiah, the eldest, had an extraordinary memory for numbers. By age 2, he could count to 100 and solve simple addition and subtraction problems. Noah, sensitive and emotionally intuitive, found joy in music. Once, at the community center, he heard a classical piano piece and reproduced it almost perfectly on a toy keyboard, leaving surrounding mothers in awe. Elijah, quiet and analytical, was fascinated by computers. He often sat beside Amara, pointing at her laptop screen with curiosity. "What are you doing, Mommy?" he'd ask with a tiny voice. "I'm building a digital home for mothers," she'd reply with a smile. But their brilliance also brought a new challenge: nurturing their talents in an environment that could support them. The public preschool in Hyde Park lacked the resources for gifted children, and Amara knew they needed a place that would foster their intellect and creativity. She looked into Bright Futures Academy, a private school for talented kids in Chicago, but the tuition stunned her. It was more than her entire year's rent. "How can I possibly afford this?" she wondered, glancing at unpaid NICU bills from their birth. One afternoon, Lena Brooks arrived with an idea. "Bright Futures has a scholarship program for children from underprivileged families," Lena said, handing Amara an application form. "But you'll need to prove the boys have exceptional potential. They'll do IQ and skill assessments." Amara's heart pounded. "Lena, what if they don't pass? I don't want them to think they're not good enough." Lena took her hand. "Amara, you've raised 3 prodigies while building a business from scratch. Your children are proof of your strength. Believe in them the way you once believed in yourself." Amara prepared her boys with care and love. She played number games with Isaiah, taught Noah simple melodies, and introduced Elijah to logic puzzles on her old laptop. On test day, she pushed their triple stroller into the lush campus of Bright Futures, feeling the stares of other parents, mostly wealthy and white. She wore her cleanest dress, but felt out of place among designer outfits and luxury handbags. "You've got this, Mama," she whispered to her boys and herself. The assessments lasted 2 hours. Despite their young age, Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah showed incredible poise. Isaiah solved math problems with ease. Noah performed an original melody. Elijah completed advanced logic puzzles. When the director, Mrs. Thompson, called Amara into her office, she braced for the worst. But Mrs. Thompson smiled. "Ms. Johnson, your sons are in the top 1% intellectually. We want to offer them full scholarships. However, supplemental fees and materials still need to be covered. Can you manage? Amara swallowed hard, thinking of her near-empty bank account and the unpredictable revenue from Amara's hope. I'll find a way, she answered, voice firm. Back home, Amara sat at the kitchen table, calculating expenses. She knew Bright Futures was a chance for her sons to thrive, but it would mean working even harder. She called Tasha, now the kitchen manager of Amara's Hope, to discuss increasing orders. We could expand to South Loop, Tasha suggested. But you need rest, Amara. You look like you're about to collapse. Amara shook her head, eyes burning. I can't stop, Tasha. My boys deserve a better future than I ever had. Tasha embraced her. We'll do this together. You gave me hope when I thought I had none. Now I'll give it back to you. With Tasha and the community's support, Amara's Hope boosted its revenue, enough for Amara to cover Bright Future's additional fees. She continued learning to code, even if only a few hours a week. One night, after the boys had drifted to sleep, she completed the prototype of Mother's Haven. The interface was simple but welcoming. She sent it to Maya Carter, who called back immediately. Ms. Johnson, this is an impressive start, Maya said. I'm connecting you with a tech team in Chicago to scale it, but you need to be ready for the big stage. Amara looked at her sleeping boys, their blue eyes glinting in the soft light. She thought of Ethan, of his cruel words that she'd never be enough. But Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah were proof that she was enough. She was a mother, a founder, and a black woman rewriting her story. I'm ready, she whispered, not just to Maya, but to herself. Amara's journey of self-learning and growth wasn't just for her anymore. It was for her sons, for the community that lifted her. Bright Futures would be the beginning of their path. Mother's Haven would be her legacy. The neon lights of Brooklyn, New York, reflected off the window of a small office on the third floor of an old building, where Amara Johnson stood looking out at the bustling streets. At 35, she had come a long way from the cramped rental room in Englewood, Chicago. Amara's Hope, the meal delivery service for single mothers, had grown into Amara Rise, a tech company with the Mother's Haven app serving 12 million users across 43 countries. Forbes called her the Black Phoenix of tech, yet Amara still saw herself as the pregnant woman who once stood in the rain, determined not to let Ethan Caldwell define her life. 6 years earlier, Amara had moved to New York to expand Amara Rise, thanks to a $500,000 investment from Maya Carter and the support of the Black community in Chicago. Mother's Haven wasn't just a food ordering app. It was an ecosystem. Single mothers could find flexible work, exchange childcare services, and access legal resources. The app grew through word of mouth among Black, brown, and immigrant women who saw their stories reflected in Amara's. But success came with pressure. Amara had to balance her role as CEO, mother of 3 boys, Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, and the mission of ensuring Amara Rise stayed true to its core values. The Brooklyn office was a turning point. It is no longer just a kitchen in Bronzeville. It now houses 15 employees, most of them women from the very communities Amara served. Once a single mother in the Mary's Haven shelter, Tasha was now COO, bringing structure and a fierce spirit. From the beginning, Lena Brooks, the lawyer with her, oversaw legal affairs to ensure Amara Rise upheld its mission to support disadvantaged women. But financial pressure loomed large. Despite millions of users, Mother's Haven's operating costs, servers, staff, marketing, far exceeded its revenue. One morning, Amara sat in a boardroom with the board of directors, Maya Carter and 2 new investors, white men from Silicon Valley. They presented an enticing offer. Tech Trend, a tech conglomerate, wanted to acquire Mother's Haven for $120 million. This is your chance to live comfortably with your children, said Mr. Reynolds, one of the investors. You've accomplished the impossible, Ms. Johnson. Now is the time to cash out. Amara looked out the window, thinking of Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, now attending Bright Futures Academy in Chicago. Her children were her drive, and her reminder that Amara Rise wasn't just a business. It was a mission. If Tech Trend buys us, she replied, her voice calm but firm, they'll prioritize profit over people. Mother's Haven exists to help mothers like me, not to enrich shareholders. Mr. Reynolds raised an eyebrow. You're turning down $120 million? You're a single mom with no degree. This kind of opportunity doesn't come twice. His words stirred memories of Ethan, of his claim she would never be enough. Amara took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room. She said, I'm saying no, because our mission is worth more than money. Amara Rise was built to lift those left behind by society. If we sell, we betray them. I'll find another way. The meeting ended in tension, but Maya Carter gave her a reassuring pat on the back outside the room. That was brave, Amara, Maya said. But now you need a plan to keep Amara Rise independent. I'll help you. Amara returned to her office, her mind racing. She knew rejecting Tech Trend was a massive risk. The board might lose confidence, and investors might pull out. But she couldn't abandon the mothers who believed in her. Women like Tasha, Keisha, and the millions using Mother's Haven. She opened her laptop and checked the data. 70% of users were Black and brown women, and 60% lived below the poverty line. We can't leave them behind, she whispered. That evening, Amara picked up her sons from an after-school program in Brooklyn, where they were temporarily enrolled while she searched for suitable schools in New York. Isaiah, sharp-minded and logical, talked about a challenging math problem he'd just solved. Noah, sensitive and musical, clutched his toy piano, humming an original melody. Curious and analytical, Elijah asked about his mom's app. Can Mother's Haven help my friends find someone to play with? Elijah's innocent question sparked a new idea for Amara, a forum for the children of single mothers to connect and ease loneliness. Amara sat with her sons at their small Brooklyn apartment, reading bedtime stories. When they were asleep, she opened her laptop and continued coding for Mother's Haven. She wasn't a professional developer, but persistence and online courses had helped her build the prototype. She updated the tech team, proposing a new feature inspired by Elijah's idea. We need to make children feel connected, she wrote in the email. A week later, Amara was invited to a tech conference in New York, where she would present Mother's Haven to potential new investors. Lena helped her prepare, emphasizing that Amara's story, a Black woman, a single mother, self-taught in tech, was her greatest asset. They'll doubt you, Lena said, because you don't look like a typical CEO. But that's your strength. Let them see it. On the conference day, Amara stood in a simple yet elegant suit Tasha had picked out from a thrift store before the auditorium. She shared her journey, from shelter life and premature triplets to building Amara Rise. Mother's Haven isn't just an app, she said with conviction. It's a community, an ecosystem helping single mothers survive and thrive. We're not selling our mission, but welcome partners who believe in its value. One investor, Ms. Nguyen, stood up. Ms. Johnson, how do you compete with tech giants when you don't have their resources? Amara smiled. We don't compete with money. We compete with trust. Our users, Black, brown, immigrant women, believe in us because I used to be them. That's something no company can replicate. After the conference, Ms. Nguyen committed to investing $2 million, enough for Amara Rise to expand its team and servers. But the pressure didn't ease. Amara knew that the company needed to grow faster to remain independent, even as she continued raising Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah. Her sons were now her center, but their blue eyes reminded her of Ethan and wounds that hadn't fully healed. She told herself, "I'm not doing this to prove anything to him. I'm doing it so my sons know we can overcome anything." When Amara Rise was valued at $3.8 billion in a new funding round, Amara stood in her office, gazing at the company's logo on the wall. From an idea born in a shared kitchen, she had built an empire, not just for herself, but for millions of women left behind by society. But she knew the journey was far from over. With her children beside her and the community behind her, Amara was ready for whatever came next, carrying the fire of a black woman who would never back down. The dim light of the hallway at the Regency Hotel in Manhattan cast a shadow over the petite figure of Amara Johnson, now dressed in a dull gray cleaning staff uniform. Her signature curly hair was tucked beneath a hood, and a pair of special glasses with a tiny hidden camera concealed her warm brown eyes. At 35, Amara was the CEO of Amara Rise, a $3.8 billion tech company whose app, Mother's Haven, supported millions of single mothers worldwide. But today, she was undercover as an anonymous employee on a secret mission to investigate the working conditions of Black and immigrant laborers at this luxury hotel in partnership with the New York Times. With each step, she relived her past, the exhausting workdays in Chicago, being treated as invisible. Amara had proposed this investigation after hearing a story from Keisha, a former Amara's Hope employee now working at the Regency. Keisha spoke of 14-hour shifts without breaks, threats of deportation from managers if anyone complained, and a minimum wage that couldn't support a living. Keisha said, "They treat us like we're not human," voice trembling. Those words stirred something in Amara. Memories of cleaning offices at 3 a.m. and clients' disdainful glances at Ciel. She decided she had to act, not just for Keisha, but for the thousands of invisible workers like her. The disguise was a bold, even risky idea. Lena Brooks, her longtime legal partner from Chicago, warned her, "Amara, you are the face of Amara Rise. If discovered, your reputation and the company's could suffer." But Amara was resolute. "I can't speak about social justice without understanding it," she replied. "I was once them, Lena. I need to see it with my own eyes." Amara began her shift at the Regency under the alias Tina Brown, as shown on her staff badge. She mopped floors, changed bedsheets, and cleaned bathrooms, the camera in her glasses recording every detail. Managers yelling at immigrant workers, a Honduran woman scolded for taking a water break, a black worker denied sick leave despite a harsh cough. Amara felt the ache in her back and legs as if she were back in Englewood. But instead of despair, she transformed the pain into determination. "This is why I'm doing this," she whispered, capturing footage of a manager threatening to fire a worker over a spilled glass of water. Mid-shift, Amara spoke with Maria, an immigrant worker from Guatemala. "How long have you worked here?" Amara asked in Spanish as they changed a bed together. 3 years, Maria replied softly. 7 days a week, no days off. If I ask for time off, they say they'll call immigration." Amara nodded, her chest tightening. She remembered the fear of losing her work visa in Chicago. "Do they pay overtime?" she asked. Maria gave a bitter smile. "Overtime? We're lucky if they pay us at all." Amara's camera recorded these moments, but also stirred something more profound in her. She thought of Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, now 7 years old, attending the Manhattan Academy for Exceptional Learners, a school for gifted children in New York. Her sons were her motivation, but also a reminder of mothers like Maria, who had no such opportunities for their children. I'm going to change this, Amara vowed, scrubbing a bathtub until it gleamed. During a short break, Amara sat in the staff room, listening to Maria talk about her 5-year-old daughter, who lived with her grandmother because Maria couldn't care for her. Maria said, "I want her to go to a good school," eyes glistening, "but I don't know how." Amara held her hand and whispered, "There will be a way." She thought of Mother's Haven and how the app could expand to offer scholarships or educational services for the children of workers like Maria. The investigation lasted 3 days, each a test of both body and spirit. At night, Amara returned to her apartment in Brooklyn, exhausted but relentless in analyzing footage from the camera. She sent clips to an editor at the New York Times and detailed notes about the labor violations. But pressure came from more than just the work. She worried about her children, especially when Isaiah asked, "Mom, why are you home so late? I wanted you to read to me." Amara hugged him and explained, "I'm working on something important, to help people like I once needed help." Tasha, now COO of Amara Rise, noticed how drained Amara had become. While Amara sat in her office reviewing footage one evening, Tasha walked in. "You can't do everything, Amara," she said, concern in her voice. "You're a CEO, a mother, and now a secret journalist? You need to share the load." Amara gave a tired smile. "Tasha, I have to. People like Maria have no one to speak for them. I used to be them. And you've overcome it," Tasha replied. "But you can't help them if you collapse. Let us, Lena, the team, and me, support you." Tasha's words made Amara realize she didn't have to do everything alone. She delegated part of Amara Rise's operational duties to Tasha and the team and focused on completing the investigation. One night, while reviewing footage, she saw a Regency manager threaten a black worker, calling her lazy for requesting to leave early. Amara clenched her fists, the memories of being demeaned at Le Ciel rising again. "No more," she whispered. "I'll make them change." The investigation concluded once Amara had collected enough evidence for the article. She sent the complete data to the New York Times, knowing it would shake the hospitality industry. But returning to her apartment, she embraced her children, feeling both satisfaction and heavyweight. She thought of Ethan Caldwell, of his words that she would never measure up. This investigation wasn't just to help people like Maria. It was Amara's way of proving she could change an unjust system. Amara took Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah to the park that weekend, watching them play. Isaiah solved a math puzzle in the sand. Noah sang a song he composed, and Elijah tried to fix a broken toy car. Amara smiled, knowing this investigation was not just a step forward for Amara Rise. It was a promise to her children. Their mother would always fight for justice, not just for them, but for the forgotten ones society leaves behind. The crystal chandeliers in the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel in Manhattan sparkled like stars, casting a luxurious glow over the pristine white floral arrangements and silk tablecloths. Amara Johnson, disguised in a dull gray housekeeping uniform, quietly wiped down a banquet table in the corner of the room. The tiny camera hidden in her glasses recorded every detail for the New York Times investigation into labor conditions at the hotel. At 35, she was the CEO of Amara Rise, a $3.8 billion tech company. But today, she was Tina Brown, an anonymous worker blending in with the other Black and immigrant employees. Each movement was slow, masking the exhaustion from 3 consecutive days of labor. But her eyes remained sharp, alert to every injustice around her. Amara had no idea that, in the same building, Ethan Caldwell, the man who had abandoned her 8 years ago when she was pregnant, was preparing for his wedding to Olivia Harrington, the daughter of a powerful senator. Ethan, now 40, still carried his handsome features, silver-streaked hair, and piercing blue eyes. He stood at the entrance to the ballroom, adjusting his tailored tuxedo, This wedding was a strategic alliance that would fortify Caldwell Properties' position among New York's elite. But fate, in its cruel irony, had arranged for Amara's past and present to collide in a moment no one could have foreseen. At the same time, Amara's three sons, Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, now 7 years old, were also at the Regency to attend an academic award ceremony hosted by the Manhattan Academy for Exceptional Learners in a nearby conference room. Isaiah, a math prodigy, was receiving a national first-place award. Noah, a young pianist, was performing the opening piece, and Elijah, a budding programmer, presented an app he designed himself. The boys, with their striking blue eyes inherited from Ethan, were unaware that the father they'd never met was nearby, just as their mother was working undercover mere steps away. While wiping the table, Amara overheard a manager shout at an immigrant worker, "Hurry up! The VIPs are arriving." She bowed her head, remaining invisible, even as her camera recorded the harshness. Suddenly, a wave of dizziness struck, an after effect of the long shifts and sleepless nights. She steadied herself against the table, breathing deeply, trying to remain upright. "Just one more hour," she whispered, knowing her shift would end just before her son's ceremony began. Ethan raised a glass of champagne inside the ballroom, smiling at Olivia, though his eyes looked distant. Recently, he read a Forbes article about Amara Rise, the Black Phoenix of tech, and her three gifted sons. The photos of the boys, with eyes identical to his, had shaken him, but he pushed the thought away. Impossible, he told himself, refocusing on the wedding. Then, piano music drifted in from the nearby conference room, Noah's performance. The melody was haunting and emotion-filled, prompting several guests to turn their heads. Ethan inexplicably moved, stepped into the hallway, and followed the sound. He stopped cold when he saw Noah on stage, the boy's face a mirror image of his childhood. Ethan's heart pounded, but before he could react, Isaiah and Elijah appeared, leading their classmates out of the room. The three boys, identical in appearance, left him frozen in disbelief. Back in the ballroom corner, Amara remained unaware of Ethan's presence. She continued wiping tables until the dizziness surged again, more intense this time. As she struggled to stay upright, a tray of glassware slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. The loud crash drew the eyes of every guest. Just then, Isaiah, passing by in the hallway, recognized his mother despite her disguise. "Mom!" he shouted, running into the ballroom, followed closely by Noah and Elijah. Isaiah's cry shattered Amara's cover. She turned, saw her children, and, in a moment of panic and exhaustion, collapsed. Her sons rushed to her side as Ethan, only a few feet away, recognized Amara when her glasses fell off, exposing her face. "Amara," he whispered, voice breaking. Her face, though weary, still held the resilient strength he had seen 8 years ago. And the three boys, with eyes just like his, stood as undeniable proof of the greatest mistake of his life. The guests murmured, phones lifted to record. Radiantly in her wedding gown, Olivia stepped beside Ethan, her expression shifting from confusion to suspicion. "Ethan, what is this?" she asked, eyeing the three boys who looked exactly like her fiancé. Senator Harrington, Olivia's father, approached, his tone icy. "Caldwell, explain. Now." Supported by her sons, Amara tried to remain composed. "I'm okay, boys," she whispered weakly. She looked at Ethan, not with anger, but with fatigue. "You don't need to explain," she rasped. 8 years ago, you made your choice." Isaiah stepped in front of his mother, his gaze firm. "Who are you?" he asked, his young voice sharp and challenging. Noah held Amara's hand, while Elijah silently picked up her fallen glasses to protect her evidence. Ethan opened his mouth, but found no words. The meticulously planned wedding was now unraveling in chaos. Security rushed in to control the crowd, while guests' phones captured everything. News spread across social media. Tech CEO Amara Rise collapses at real estate tycoon's wedding. Secret children revealed. With her son's help, Amara stood, retrieving her real employee badge from her pocket. "I'm Amara Johnson," she told security, her voice weak but resolute. "I'm here investigating for the New York Times. Please call an ambulance." When medics arrived, Amara was placed in an ambulance, her sons climbing in beside her. Ethan stood frozen, watching as everything crumbled. Olivia quietly removed her engagement ring and put it in his hand, her eyes full of pain. "I need time, Ethan," she said, then walked away with her father. Inside the ambulance, Amara held Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah's hands. "I'm sorry I scared you," she whispered. Isaiah, mature beyond his years, replied, "Don't worry, Mom. We're here for you." Noah wrapped his arms around her while Elijah asked, "Mom, who was that man? He looks like us." Amara took a deep breath, knowing everything had changed. "He's your biological father," she said calmly. "But a birth father is the one who stays, and I'll always be here." The confrontation at the wedding didn't just expose Ethan's past. It affirmed Amara's strength. She wasn't seeking revenge, but the truth had spoken for itself. As the ambulance drove through Manhattan, Amara looked at her sons, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, as a family forged in hardship, never to be broken. The soft light of New York Presbyterian Hospital filtered through the curtains, casting a gentle glow on Amara Johnson's calm face. She sat upright in the hospital bed, having changed out of her gray housekeeping uniform into a simple sweater Tasha had brought her. It had been less than 24 hours since she collapsed at Ethan Caldwell's wedding at the Regency Hotel. Yet Amara felt a strange sense of relief, as though an invisible weight had lifted. The doctor confirmed it was exhaustion and dehydration. Nothing serious, but strongly advised rest. Rest for Amara was a luxury. She was the CEO of Amara Rise, the mother of 3 gifted boys, Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, and now at the center of a media storm after the explosive events at the Regency. Outside the hospital room, the hallway buzzed with footsteps and voices. Through the slightly open door, Amara could see Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, still in their dress suits from the academic award ceremony, standing like a protective barrier. They were stopping a man, Ethan Caldwell, their biological father, whose identity they had just learned less than a day ago. "I want to speak with your mother," Ethan said, voice hoarse, lacking the confidence of a seasoned real estate CEO. "Please, just 5 minutes." Isaiah, with the maturity of someone far older than 7, replied coldly, "The right to speak isn't something you're just given. You walked away 8 years ago." Noah held Elijah's hand and eyes emotionally while Elijah studied Ethan with analytical curiosity, as if solving a complicated equation. Amara took a deep breath and stepped to the door. "Boys, let me handle this," she said gently but firmly. The 3 exchanged glances and stepped back, still standing close, ready to protect their mother. Ethan entered, his tuxedo wrinkled, silver-streaked hair disheveled, a far cry from the man who once threw Amara out of a penthouse in Chicago. Amara looked at him, not with bitterness, but with the weariness of someone who had long since made peace with the past. "Amara, Ethan began, hesitating. "I don't know what to say. I was wrong. I never imagined that you would build all of this." Amara offered a faint smile. "You don't need to be surprised, Ethan. 8 years ago, you said I wasn't good enough. But I didn't build Amara Rise to prove you wrong. I did it for my sons, for mothers like me. Society doesn't see. Ethan bowed his head, fists clenched. Caldwell Properties is collapsing. Our stock dropped 22% after yesterday. Olivia called off the wedding. The board wants to replace me. But what hurts most is seeing those boys, my sons. They're not your sons, Amara interrupted, voice steady but sharp. They are my sons. Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah result from sleepless nights, working 3 jobs, and teaching myself to code so I could build a future. You chose to leave, Ethan. Fatherhood isn't something you can reclaim. Ethan nodded, eyes red with emotion. I know I don't deserve it, but I want to try. Not to replace you, but to know them. I want to make things right. Amara looked at her sons, standing at the threshold, their eyes a blend of worry and resolve. That's their decision, she said. They're old enough to choose for themselves. Isaiah stepped forward, his voice firm. I want to know who you are, but not because you're my father. I want to understand why Mom had to fight alone. Noah, more sensitive, added, I want to know what kind of person you are. But Mom is our family. Elijah, always logical, said, I need genetic data. For science. But don't expect me to call you Dad. Ethan nodded, pain and gratitude mingling in his expression. Thank you. I'll do my best. As Ethan left, Lena Brooks entered, holding a tablet filled with alerts. The New York Times wants to fast-track the investigation article, she said. And the Amara Rise board is calling an emergency meeting about yesterday. Our stock is up 4% thanks to the media attention, but they're worried about your public image. Amara nodded, her mind already shifting back to work. I'll join the meeting from home, Lena, and tell the Times I'm continuing the investigation. We have to use this moment to fight for better conditions for workers. Noah protested. Mom, the doctor said you need to rest. Amara smiled, brushing his hair gently. I will, sweetheart. But this work is for people like us, who we used to be. The next day, Amara held a press conference at the Amara Rise headquarters in Brooklyn. She stood before a forest of microphones in an elegant navy dress, her gaze steady. She began, I'm not here to recount the past or point fingers. I'm here to speak about forgiveness and moving forward. 8 years ago, I was a pregnant single mother, abandoned. Today, I lead Amara Rise, a company serving 12 million mothers worldwide. Ethan Caldwell has agreed to donate $200 million to the Amara Rise Foundation, expanding scholarships and housing for single-parent families. The press room erupted with camera flashes and questions. A journalist asked, What exactly did you forgive Caldwell for? Amara replied, Forgiveness isn't for him. It's for me and my children. It allows us to move forward without carrying the burden of resentment. After the press conference, Amara sat with her sons in their Brooklyn apartment. Isaiah showed her a headline on his tablet. CEO Amara Rise, from shelter to global force. Noah asked, Mom, was it hard talking about Dad, about him in front of everyone? Amara pulled him close. It wasn't hard, sweetheart, because I know we are stronger than what happened to us. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing to live for ourselves. Elijah, typing on his laptop, said, Mom, I looked into Caldwell Properties. They've lost 25% of their value since yesterday, but I'm not happy about that. Amara nodded, proud of her son's maturity. We don't take joy in someone else's downfall, Elijah. We build joy from what we create. The consequences for Ethan were inevitable. A crumbling company, a broken engagement, and a shattered reputation. But Amara never sought revenge. She remained focused on the mission of Amara Rise, on her children, and the community that had lifted her. The confrontation at the wedding hadn't just exposed the past. It confirmed the power of a Black woman who turned pain into legacy. The spring sun cast a warm golden light over the new Queens, New York grounds, where the Amara Rise Center for Single-Parent Families was inaugurated. Amara Johnson, now 36, stood on a temporary stage in an elegant navy blue suit, her eyes glowing with pride. Before she was a crowd of single mothers, children, investors, and journalists, all gathered to witness the pinnacle of an 8-year journey that began in a Chicago shelter and grew into a $3.8 billion tech empire. Beside her stood Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, now 8, in custom-tailored suits, their bright blue eyes reflecting intelligence and empathy. The Amara Rise Center was a dream realized, a complex offering affordable housing, childcare services, vocational training rooms, and community spaces for single-parent families. It wasn't just a shelter. It was an ecosystem designed to uplift Black, brown, and immigrant women from poverty. "This center isn't just a home," Amara said into the microphone, her voice resonating across the crowd. "It's where single mothers find strength, dignity, and opportunity. This is our legacy, not just mine, but of everyone who believed in Amara Rise." The crowd erupted in applause, but Amara felt a quiet current of emotion beneath it. She remembered the rainy night in Chicago, when Ethan Caldwell threw her out of his penthouse, calling her not good enough. She thought of the exhausting days juggling 3 jobs, raising premature triplets, and teaching herself to code. She thought of Tasha, Lena Brooks, Maya Carter, and the community that had lifted her. This center was proof that she had built a legacy from pain, not just for her sons, but for millions more. Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, wise beyond their years, led the first residents on tours through the center. With a sharp mathematical mind, Isaiah explained how the building layout optimized space. Noah, sensitive and musical, played a short piano melody in the community room, drawing cheers from the children. Logical and tech-savvy, Elijah showed mothers how to use the Mother's Haven app to schedule childcare services. Watching them, Amara felt her heart overflow. They weren't just brilliant, but compassionate boys, raised in love and resilience. In the third row of the crowd, Ethan Caldwell sat quietly, avoiding attention. Since the incident at the wedding, he had donated $200 million to the Amara Rise Foundation, a gesture the press called a public act of redemption. He had begun meeting the boys one-on-one, sharing simple dinners to get to know Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah. It was slow, complicated progress, but Amara didn't interfere. "The boys have a right to choose," she had told Lena. "I don't hate Ethan, but I don't need him either. We are enough." During the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Amara accidentally locked eyes with Ethan. There was no anger, no romantic reconciliation, only a faint nod, an acknowledgement that a chapter had closed. Now struggling to rebuild his company after the scandal, Ethan looked at Amara and their sons with newfound respect. He finally understood that his greatest mistake wasn't just abandoning Amara. It was underestimating her strength. After the event, Amara sat with Tasha and Lena in the center's temporary office. "You did it, Amara," Tasha said, her eyes misty from Mary's Haven kitchen to this. "You're a symbol for all of us." Amara shook her head with a smile. "Not me, Tasha. Us. You, Maya, Keisha, the community. We built this together." Lena, ever the realist, handed over a tablet. "The New York Times just published the investigation. The Regency is now under labor law scrutiny. You've changed the game, Amara." Amara nodded, but her thoughts turned to her sons. Back in their Brooklyn apartment that evening, she sat with Isaiah, Noah, and Elijah, sharing homemade cake to celebrate the grand opening. Noah asked Mom if Mr. Caldwell had come to the center that day. Are you mad at him? Amara paused, choosing her words carefully. I used to be angry, but not anymore. Anger is heavy. I choose forgiveness, not for him, so we can live light and free. Elijah, always thinking logically, added, I looked him up. His company is now worth only $800 million, less than Amara Rise. But I don't think that matters. Amara stroked his hair gently. You're right, sweetheart. What we build matters, not to outdo anyone, but to lift others. Isaiah, always the leader, added, I'm proud of you, Mom. This center will help kids like we once were, right? Amara pulled them into her arms, tears falling. Yes, Isaiah. And you three are the reason I never gave up. Amara stood by the window as the Brooklyn lights dimmed, gazing at the city. From that stormy night in Chicago, she had turned pain into power and built an empire not of wealth alone, but of hope and dignity. The Amara Rise Center proved that once deemed invisible, a black woman could change the world. With her children beside her and a community behind her, Amara knew her legacy would endure, not just for today, but for generations to come.